The crystal spires of Murthy City burned in the red dawn light. Commander Zixthal pressed his long fingers against the cold stone wall of the underground bunker and felt the tremors from above. Each shake meant another building falling, another piece of his world dying. 3 years ago, the Zephyrian ships had appeared in their sky like metal vultures. The Valtharians had tried to talk first, as they always did. Their people were builders and singers, not fighters. They grew crystal forests that took thousands of years to mature, and created music that could heal broken minds. War was something their ancestors had left behind long ago. The Zephyrians did not want to talk, they wanted crystals. They wanted the living light that powered Valtharian cities and made their technology work. Most of all, they wanted to feed their hungry machines called Devourers. Zixthal looked around the main bunker room. 2,000 Valtharians sat quietly in the dim light. Some held small crystal fragments that barely glowed anymore. Others hummed the old songs under their breath. Children leaned against their parents, too tired from hunger to play. The youngest ones had never seen their crystal forests in full bloom. They had only known war and darkness and the constant fear of the sky monsters. Captain Rinville approached with the latest reports. Her uniform was torn and dirty, her normally bright purple skin now pale from exhaustion. "The western sector has fallen," she said quietly. "The Devourers broke through the energy barrier 2 hours ago. We lost another 300 defenders." Zixthal closed his eyes. 300 more brave souls gone. How many crystals did they take? All of them. The entire western crystal grove is gone. Nothing left but metal stumps and feeding tubes. Rinville's voice shook with anger and grief. The Devourers stripped everything down to the root systems. It will take 3,000 years for that grove to grow back, if it ever does. The crystal groves were more than just power sources. They were the heart of Valtharian culture, living entities that stored memories and songs from generations past. When the Devourers consumed them, they were eating the very soul of the Valtharian people. Another tremor shook the bunker. Dust fell from the ceiling as the sound of grinding metal echoed through the walls. The children moved closer to their parents. Even the youngest ones knew that sound meant danger. "Commander," called out Tech Specialist Kortham from his position at the communication station. "I'm getting readings from the surface scanners. 3 more Devourer units are moving toward the city center. They'll reach the main crystal formation within the hour." Zixthal felt his heart sink. The main crystal formation was the last major power source left on this side of the planet. Without it, their shields would fail completely, and the Zephyrians could walk right into their bunkers. After 3 years of fighting, this was how it would end. Not with a great battle, but with slow starvation as their enemies ate their world piece by piece. High Matriarch Velandra rose from her meditation circle in the corner of the bunker. At over 400 years old, she was one of the wisest Valtharians alive. Her silver hair flowed like water down her back, and her ancient eyes held the knowledge of a dozen generations. When she spoke, everyone listened. "My children," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the bunker without any need to shout. "The time of the final song has come. We have fought bravely, but our enemies are too strong and too many. Soon they will break through our last defenses." Scared whispers filled the room. Some of the younger Valtharians started to cry. Parents pulled their children closer. Velandra raised her hand for silence. "Do not despair. Though our bodies may perish, our voices can still reach across the stars. Tonight, we will sing the song of last hope. We will send our story and our culture to whoever might listen. Perhaps somewhere in the great darkness, someone will hear us and remember that we existed." The song of last hope was ancient, older than their recorded history. It was said that no species had ever sung it and lived to tell about it. But it was also said that the song could cross any distance and touch any mind willing to listen. If the Valtharians were truly going to die, at least their memory might survive. The matriarch moved to the center of the room and began to gather the singers. Every Valtharian could sing to some degree, but this song required perfect harmony from every voice. Children as young as 5 would sing alongside adults who had lived for centuries. Their voices would blend together and reach out into space, carrying with it everything the Valtharians had ever learned or created. As the preparation began, another report came from the surface. Commander, the Devourers have reached the outer crystal formations. The main power grid is fluctuating. We have maybe 6 hours before total shutdown. Zixthal nodded grimly. 6 hours to sing a song that would take 4 hours to complete properly. If they were lucky, they might finish before the Zephyrians broke down their doors. If they were very lucky, someone somewhere in the galaxy might hear them before it was too late. The first notes of the Song of Last Hope began to rise from the bunker. Hundreds of voices joined together in perfect harmony, creating a sound unlike anything else in the galaxy. The song carried pain and beauty, knowledge and memory, love and loss, all woven together into something that touched the very fabric of space itself. Above ground, the Zephyrian machines continued their relentless advance, unaware that their victims were singing their defiance into the stars. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the signal came through. He had been staring out the window of his quarters aboard the UES Defiant, watching a distant star cluster that his crew had been mapping for the past 2 weeks. Space exploration was usually quiet work, which was exactly what Morrison liked after 15 years of combat missions along the frontier. The communication alarm buzzed 3 times, meaning the signal was coming from outside human space. Morrison set down his coffee cup and walked quickly to the bridge. His crew was already at their stations, looking confused and excited at the same time. "What do we have, Lisa?" Morrison asked as he settled into his captain's chair. Dr. Lisa Chang looked up from her computer screen, her dark eyes wide with amazement. "Sir, we're receiving some kind of transmission from the direction of the outer spiral. It's unlike anything in our databases. The signal is incredibly complex, almost like music, but it's carrying massive amounts of data." Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez turned from his station. "Captain, this signal is powerful enough to reach us from at least 30 light years away. Whatever is sending it has technology we've never seen before." Morrison frowned. In all his years exploring space, they had never encountered another intelligent species. Earth scientists had always wondered if humans were alone in the galaxy. If this signal was real, it would change everything. "Can you decode it?" Morrison asked. Dr. Chang shook her head. "It's going to take time. The mathematical patterns are incredibly sophisticated. But sir, there's something else. The signal has emotional resonance. I know that sounds crazy, but when I listen to it, I can feel sadness and desperation. It's like someone is crying for help." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Morrison looked around at his crew. These were good people, scientists, and explorers who had signed up to find new worlds and expand human knowledge. They had not expected to stumble across someone else's war. "How long to decode the message?" Morrison asked. "Give me 12 hours, maybe less if I can crack the basic language patterns," Dr. Chang replied. "Do it, Pete. I want you to analyze the VIV signal technology. See if you can figure out how they're broadcasting across such distances. Ben, plot a course toward the signal source, but don't engage engines yet." Chief Tactical Officer Ben Parker nodded from his station. "Yes, sir. Signal is coming from a system approximately 6 days away at maximum speed." Morrison returned to his quarters, but found he could not concentrate on anything else. The signal continued to broadcast, filling the ship with its strange, haunting music. Other crew members reported the same thing Dr. Chang had noticed. The sound made them feel sad and worried, as if they were listening to someone's final words. 8 hours later, Dr. Chang called Morrison back to the bridge. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking slightly as she worked at her computer. "Captain, I've decoded enough of the message to understand what we're dealing with," she said quietly. "This is a distress call from a species called the Valtharians. Their planet is called Kithara Prime, and they're under attack by something called the Zephyrian Dominion." She pulled up a holographic display showing star charts and tactical information. "Sir, the Valtharians have been fighting for 3 years. They're losing badly. From what I can understand, the enemy has some kind of machines that consume their technology and power sources. The Valtharians are down to their last few thousand survivors." Morrison studied the display. The tactical situation looked hopeless. What exactly are they asking for? "This isn't just a request for military aid, sir. This is something they call the Song of Last Hope. It's a final transmission that contains their entire culture, their history, their knowledge. They're sending it out because they believe they're going to die, and they want someone to remember that they existed." The bridge crew exchanged glances. The idea that an entire civilization was facing extinction was almost too big to understand. "There's more, Captain," Dr. Chang continued. "I've been analyzing the enemy force composition based on the tactical data in the transmission. The Zephyrians have 3 massive ships in orbit around Kithara Prime, plus dozens of smaller vessels. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours." Chief Engineer Rodriguez whistled softly. "Captain, if we went up against ships like that, we wouldn't last 5 minutes. The Defiant is a science vessel. We have basic defensive weapons, but nothing that could challenge a fleet." Morrison knew Rodriguez was right. The Defiant carried a crew of 43 people, mostly scientists and technicians. Their mission was to explore and study, not fight wars against advanced alien empires. "Sir," said Communications Officer Amy Foster from her station, "the signal is getting weaker. I think the Valtharians are running out of power." Morrison closed his eyes and thought about the choice he had to make. Standard military protocol was clear. When encountering unknown alien forces, return to base immediately and report to command. Earth would send proper warships and diplomats to handle the situation. But that would take months, maybe years. The Valtharians did not have that kind of time. He thought about his own family back on Earth. His daughter Emma was starting college next year. His wife Sarah was teaching at the elementary school in their hometown. They lived peaceful lives because other people had been willing to fight when fighting was necessary. How could he turn away when someone else's children were in danger? "Captain," Dr. Chang said softly, "I'm receiving what sounds like children's voices now. They're joining the song." Morrison opened his eyes and looked at his crew. He saw the same conflict on every face. They all knew the smart thing to do. They also knew the right thing to do. "All stop," Morrison ordered. "Ben, lay in a course for Kithara Prime. Best possible speed." "Sir, are you sure about this?" Rodriguez asked. "We're talking about taking on an entire enemy fleet with one science ship." Morrison stood up and addressed his entire crew over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain speaking. We have intercepted a distress call from a species facing extinction. I know we're not a warship. I know we're probably flying into a situation we can't handle. But I also know that if we don't try, those people are going to die, and we'll have to live with that for the rest of our lives." He paused, looking around the bridge. "Anyone who wants to object to this mission can do so now. I'll put it in the log that you followed proper protocol." No one spoke. The bridge was quiet except for the continuing alien song that filled their ship with its desperate beauty. "Very well. Pete, give me everything the engines have. Lisa, keep working on that translation. We need to know everything about the enemy." When we get there, Ben, start working on tactical scenarios. I know we can't fight them directly, but maybe we can find another way to help." The Defiant turned toward the Cathara system and accelerated to maximum speed. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and more distant. Ahead lay an unknown enemy and a dying world that had called out to the darkness, hoping someone would answer. Morrison returned to his quarters and picked up the picture of his family. He hoped he would see them again, but he knew some things were more important than playing it safe. If humanity was going to take its place among the stars, it would not be as conquerors or cowards, but as the kind of people who answered when help was needed. The used Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cathara system, and Captain Morrison felt his heart sink at what he saw. 3 enormous ships hung in orbit around the dying planet like mechanical vultures. Each one was easily the size of a small city, covered in dark metal and pulsing with red lights. Smaller ships buzzed around them like angry insects, ferrying materials from the planet's surface to the Morrison had seen plenty of battles during his military career, but nothing had prepared him for this level of destruction. The planet below should have been glowing with crystal formations, according to the data Dr. Chang had decoded. Instead, huge sections of the surface were dark, stripped bare by the enemy machines. "My God," whispered Chief Engineer Rodriguez from his station. "Look at the size of those things." Dr. Chang was working frantically at her computer, trying to establish contact with the Valtharian survivors. "Captain, I'm getting a response to our communication attempt. Very weak signal, coming from underground on the planet's surface." "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was alien but somehow familiar. The translation software Dr. Chang had developed turned the harmonic sounds into words they could understand. "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Zixthal of the Valtharian Defense Corps. Who are you? How did you find us?" Morrison stepped forward. "Commander, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Defiant. We received your distress signal and came to help." There was a long pause. When Zixthal spoke again, his voice was filled with disbelief. "You came to help us? But that is impossible. No one answers the song of last hope. No species has ever answered such a call." "Well, we're here now," Morrison said simply. "What's your situation down there?" "We have maybe 2,000 survivors left in the underground bunkers. The Zephyrian Devourers have consumed most of our crystal forests. We estimate 6 hours before our final shields fail and they break through to our location." Chief Tactical Officer Ben Parker had been studying the enemy fleet through their sensors. "Captain, I've analyzed their ship configurations. The big ones are harvester vessels, designed to strip resources from planets. They have some defensive weapons, but they're not primarily warships. The real threat comes from those smaller ships." "Providing escort," Morrison nodded. "How many escort ships?" 47 that I can count, probably more on the far side of the planet. Each one is roughly equivalent to our most advanced military vessels back home. We're outnumbered and outgunned by a massive margin." The tactical situation was even worse than Morrison had feared. A direct military attack would be suicide, but there had to be another way. Humans had survived countless impossible situations throughout history by finding solutions nobody else had thought of. "Lisa, can you establish a stronger communication link with the survivors? I want to learn everything possible about Zephyrian technology and tactics." Dr. Chang worked her magic with the communication equipment, boosting their signal and fine-tuning the translation protocols. Soon they were talking directly with Zixthal and several other Valtharian leaders, including High Matriarch Velandra herself. The conversations revealed crucial information about the enemy. The Zephyrian Devourers were not entirely mechanical. They were biomechanical creatures, part living organism and part machine. They required specific crystal resonance frequencies to operate at full efficiency. Without those frequencies, they became sluggish and confused. "Captain," said Chief Engineer Rodriguez excitedly, "I think I understand their weakness now. These devourers are tuned to harvest the natural crystal frequencies of the Valtharian technology. If we could disrupt those frequencies, create some kind of harmonic interference, we might be able to disable them." Dr. Chang looked up from her computer. "The Valtharians still have some intact crystal networks in their underground systems. If we could coordinate with them, we might be able to create a planet-wide disruption field." Morrison felt a spark of hope for the first time since arriving in the system. What would that require? Someone would have to reach the great crystal at the planet's core. Zixthal explained through the communication link. "It's the master control node for all crystal networks on Kithara Prime, but the route is heavily guarded by Zephyrian ground forces, and activating the disruption field would require direct physical contact with the crystal itself. What happens to whoever makes that contact?" Morrison asked. Though he suspected he already knew the answer, there was another pause before Valandra's ancient voice came through the speakers. The energy required to generate a planet-wide harmonic disruption would be fatal to most life forms. The person who activates the field would not survive the process. The bridge fell silent. Morrison looked around at his crew. These were good people, scientists, and explorers who had signed up to study stars and planets, not die in alien wars. But he could see in their faces the same determination he felt in his own heart. "There's another problem," Ben Parker added quietly. "Even if we could create this disruption field, we'd still need to deal with the Zephyrian ships in orbit. They might retreat, or they might decide to destroy the planet rather than lose their prize." Morrison studied the tactical display, thinking. Hard. The plan was dangerous and had almost no chance of success. But it was the only plan they had, and it was better than watching an entire species die without even trying to help. "Commander Zixthal," Morrison said into the communication system, "we're going to attempt to reach the Great Crystal. Can your people provide us with safe passage through the underground tunnels?" "Captain Morrison," Zixthal replied, "you would risk your lives for a species you have never met? Why would you do such a thing?" Morrison thought about his daughter back on Earth, about all the children on all the worlds who deserve to grow up free from the fear of monsters like the Zephyrians. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. Dr. Chang had been working on her computer while they talked. "Captain, I've been analyzing the harmonic patterns in the Valtharian crystal technology. I think I might be able to interface with their systems directly. My research into their language has given me some understanding of how their harmonic frequencies work." "Lisa, you're talking about a suicide mission," Morrison said firmly. "So is this entire operation," she replied. "But if we don't try, those people down there are going to die anyway. At least this way, we give them a chance." Morrison looked at his crew again. Rodriguez was already preparing equipment for a ground mission. Parker was calculating orbital mechanics for their ship's positioning. Foster was setting up emergency communication protocols. None of them had asked to be heroes, but all of them were ready to do what was necessary. "All right," Morrison said. "Pete, I want you to prepare a landing shuttle with everything we might need for the ground mission. Ben, position the ship where we can provide covering fire if needed, but stay ready to get out fast if this goes bad. Amy, maintain communication with both the Valtharians and Earth Command. If we don't make it back, at least someone should know what happened here." As the crew prepared for what might be their final mission, Morrison walked to the window and looked down at the dying planet below. Somewhere in the darkness, 2,000 Valtharians were waiting for a miracle. Morrison was not sure if humans qualified as miracles, but they were about to find out. The Defiant began its descent toward Kithara Prime, carrying the hopes of two species into the unknown darkness below. The human shuttle landed in a crater that had once been a beautiful crystal garden. Captain Morrison stepped out first, followed by Dr. Chang, Chief Engineer Rodriguez, and 2 security officers. The air was thick with dust and the smell of burned metal. Above them, the sky flickered with the lights of Zephyrian ships continuing their harvest. Commander Zixthal met them at the crater's edge, moving carefully through the rubble. Up close, the Valtharian commander was taller than Morrison had expected, with long limbs and pale purple skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. His large eyes held a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Captain Morrison," Zixthal said, through the translation device Dr. Chang had built, "I still cannot believe you came. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no species has ever answered a song of last hope." Morrison looked around at the devastation. Twisted metal structures rose from the ground where crystal trees had once grown. In the distance, they could see one of the massive devourer machines slowly consuming what remained of a crystal formation, its biomechanical mouth grinding the living stone into paste. "We're here now," Morrison said. "Let's focus on stopping this." Zixthal led them down into a hidden tunnel entrance. The underground passages were narrow and carved from natural rock, lit by small crystal fragments that gave off barely enough light to see. As they walked deeper into the planet, Morrison could hear the sound of machinery above them, growing closer with each passing hour. "The Zephyrians are methodical," Zixthal explained as they moved through the tunnels. "They consume the outer crystal formations first, then work their way toward the center. They know we are down here, but they prefer to starve us out rather than waste resources on direct assault." The journey through the underground took 2 hours. Along the way, they passed groups of Valtharian survivors huddled inside chambers. Children pressed against their parents, their large eyes following the strange human visitors with curiosity and fear. Elderly Valtharians hummed softly, maintaining what remained of their cultural songs, even in their darkest hour. Dr. Chang stopped to listen to one group of singers. "Captain, their music is fascinating. Each song contains layers of information, almost like a digital storage system. They're preserving their entire history through these melodies." "The songs are all we have left," said an elderly Valtharian woman. "When the crystals die, the songs remain. When we die, perhaps the songs will find new voices among the stars." Morrison felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. These people had created something beautiful in their world, and now it was being destroyed by creatures that saw only resources to consume. If the human plan failed, all of this culture and knowledge would be lost forever. They reached the entrance to the great crystal chamber as alarms began sounding throughout the tunnel system. Zixthal checked his communication device, and his face went pale. "Captain, the Zephyrians have broken through the eastern defenses. They are sending ground forces into the tunnel system. We have perhaps 30 minutes before they reach this location." The great crystal chamber was enormous, carved from solid rock with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. In the center stood the crystal itself, a massive formation that reached from floor to ceiling, pulsing weakly with dying light. Hundreds of Valtharians had gathered around it, their voices joined in a final song of their people. High Matriarch Velendra approached the human team. Despite her advanced age, she moved with dignity and grace. "Captain Morrison, Dr. Chang, you honor us with your presence in our final hour. The great crystal is dying, but it still holds enough power for the harmonic disruption. However, the process will require someone to maintain direct physical contact with the crystal throughout the entire sequence." Dr. Chang stepped forward without hesitation. "I'll do it. My research into Valtharian harmonic technology gives me the best chance of surviving the interface long enough to complete the process." "Lisa, no," Morrison said firmly. "That's an order. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself." "Captain, with respect, this isn't about following orders anymore," Dr. Chang replied. "This is about doing what's right. I have the best understanding of their technology. I'm the logical choice." Before Morrison could argue further, the sound of weapons fire echoed through the tunnels. Chief Engineer Rodriguez checked his scanner and shook his head grimly. "Zephyrian ground forces are in the tunnel system. They'll be here in 15 minutes. Morrison made a decision that went against every instinct he had as a commander. "Pete, I need you to hold the tunnel entrance. Buy us as much time as you can." Rodriguez nodded and gathered the two security officers. "Don't worry about us, Captain. Just get that crystal working." As Rodriguez and his team moved to defensive positions, Dr. Chang approached the Great Crystal. The massive formation towered above her, its surface covered in complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living things. When she placed her hands on the crystal, it began to glow brighter. "I can feel it," she said in wonder. "It's like touching the memories of an entire civilization. Every Valtharian who ever sang to this crystal, their voices are still here." The harmonic disruption sequence began slowly, with Dr. Chang serving as a conduit between human technology and Valtharian crystal systems. The process was incredibly complex, requiring her to maintain precise frequency controls while the crystal's energy flowed through her body. From the tunnel entrance came the sound of intense fighting. Rodriguez and his team were making the Zephyrian. Ground forces paid dearly for every meter of advance, but there were too many enemies and not enough defenders. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice came over the radio, strained and breathing hard. "They're breaking through. I can hold them for maybe 5 more minutes." Dr. Chang was glowing now, the crystal's energy surrounding her in waves of visible light. Her voice had taken on harmonic qualities as she sang along with the Valtharian chorus, her human vocal cords somehow adapting to their frequency patterns. Morrison watched his friend and crew member sacrifice herself to save a species she had only known for a few days. It was the most human thing he had ever witnessed, and also the most heartbreaking. The harmonic disruption built to a crescendo that could be felt throughout the planet. Above ground, Zephyrian devourers began to stumble and convulse as their biomechanical systems failed to adapt to the chaotic frequencies. The massive harvester ships in orbit found their systems malfunctioning as the disruption field spread beyond the planet's atmosphere. "It's working," Morrison said into his radio. "Amy, are you reading this from orbit?" Lieutenant Commander Foster's voice came back excited and amazed. "Captain, the Zephyrian ships are losing power. Their escort vessels are retreating. The big harvester ships are trying to pull back, but their engines are failing." Dr. Chang collapsed to her knees, still maintaining contact with the crystal, but clearly weakening. The energy flowing through her was more than any human body was designed to handle. Morrison started toward her, but she held up one hand to stop him. "Don't break the connection," she whispered. "Almost finished. Just need a few more seconds." From the tunnels came a final burst of weapons fire, then silence. Morrison knew what that meant. Rodriguez and his team had made their last stand, but they had bought enough time. The harmonic disruption reached its peak and then suddenly stopped. Dr. Chang fell forward, unconscious but still breathing. The great crystal now pulsed with renewed energy, and throughout the chamber, Valtharian crystal fragments began to glow brighter than they had in years. Above ground, the effect was even more dramatic. Zephyrian devourers collapsed completely, their biomechanical systems shutting down as they lost connection to their control networks. Throughout the planet, liberation was beginning. The harmonic disruption spread across Cathara Prime like a wave of liberation. In orbit above the planet, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster watched through the Defiance sensors as the massive Zephyrian harvester ships began to lose power. Their escort vessels, once moving in perfect formation, now drifted helplessly as their control systems failed. "Captain Morrison, this is Foster," she said into her radio. "The disruption is working better than we hoped. The Zephyrian fleet is in complete chaos. Their big ships are trying to retreat, but their engines keep shutting down. On the planet's surface, Captain Morrison knelt beside Dr. Chang, checking her vital signs. She was unconscious but alive, her body somehow having survived the massive energy surge from the Great Crystal. Around them, the Valtharians were singing a new song, one of joy and hope rather than despair. "Captain," came Rodriguez's voice. Over the radio, weak but determined. "We held the line, but barely. The Zephyrian ground forces have stopped advancing." They seem confused, like they've lost contact with their command structure. Morrison felt relief flood through him. He had thought Rodriguez and his team were dead. "Pete, get back here as fast as you can. We need to evacuate Lisa to the ship for medical attention." High Matriarch Valandra approached Morrison, her ancient face glowing with wonder. "Captain, your Dr. Chang has done something extraordinary. She has not only activated the disruption field, but she has also formed a permanent connection with our crystal network. I can sense her thoughts within the Great Crystal's memory." Morrison looked down at Dr. Chang with concern. "Is she going to be all right?" "She will live," Valandra said, "but she is changed. She now carries within her the voices of thousands of Valtharians. She will always be part of our people, as we are now part of her." Around the Great Crystal Chamber, amazing things were happening. Valtharian children who had never seen their crystal technology working properly watched in wonder as the fragments around them began to glow brightly. Elderly Valtharians wept with joy as they felt their world's life force returning. The harmonic disruption had not only stopped the Zephyrian machines, but it had also restored power to the surviving crystal networks. Commander Zixthal received reports from across the planet. "Captain Morrison, the effect is planet-wide. Every Devourer machine has shut down completely. The Zephyrian ground forces are retreating to their landing ships, but many of those ships cannot start their engines." In orbit, Foster was coordinating with the awakening Valtharian defense systems. "Captain, you need to see this. The Zephyrian cyborg soldiers are acting strangely. Some of them are attacking their own ships. It's like they're remembering who they used to be before they were turned into machines." Morrison understood what was happening. The harmonic disruption had not only affected Zephyrian technology, but it had also broken the control systems that kept their cyborg soldiers obedient. Beings from dozens of conquered worlds were suddenly free to think and act for themselves after years of forced servitude. The largest Zephyrian harvester ship, desperate to escape the system, attempted an emergency jump to hyperspace with its engines failing. The result was catastrophic. The ship's hyperdrive overloaded and exploded, creating a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. The explosion was so massive that debris from the ship rained down on Cathara Prime's largest moon. "That's one way to solve a problem," Morrison said grimly as he watched the fireworks in the sky. Dr. Chang began to stir, her eyes opening slowly. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic undertones that had not been there before. "Jake, did it work?" "It worked better than we could have hoped," Morrison replied. "How do you feel?" "Different," she said, sitting up carefully. "I can hear them, Jake. All the Valtharian voices that ever sang to the Great Crystal. Their knowledge, their memories, their songs. It's beautiful and overwhelming at the same time." Rodriguez and his team returned to the crystal chamber, battered but alive. The chief engineer had taken a Zephyrian energy blast to his shoulder, but he was grinning widely. "Captain, you should see what's happening outside. The Zephyrian ground forces are surrendering to their own former prisoners. The cyborgs are free, and they're not happy about what was done to them." Over the next several hours, the full scope of their victory became clear. The remaining Zephyrian ships in orbit either fled the system or were captured by their own liberated crews. The planet's surface was littered with disabled Devourer machines, which the Valtharians began to dismantle for useful materials. Most importantly, The crystal forests that had taken millennia to grow were already beginning to show signs of recovery. Foster brought the Defiant down to the planet's surface to pick up the landing team. As they prepared to leave the Great Crystal Chamber, High Matriarch Velandra made a formal announcement to the assembled Valtharians. "Today marks the beginning of a new age for our people," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "We have learned that we are not alone in the galaxy, and that there are other species willing to fight for justice and freedom. The humans have shown us that courage is not about having superior weapons or numbers. Courage is about doing what is right, even when the odds seem impossible." She turned to Morrison and his crew. "Captain Morrison, Dr. Chung, Chief Rodriguez, you came to us when all hope was lost. You risked your lives for people you had never met, asking nothing in return. This is a debt that can never be repaid, but it will never be forgotten." Morrison felt embarrassed by the praise. "Matriarch, we only did what anyone should do when someone calls for help." "That is precisely why your actions are so remarkable," Velandra replied. "Most species in the galaxy have forgotten how to answer such calls. You have reminded us all what it means to be truly civilized." 6 months later, Captain Morrison stood in the Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council on the station orbiting Proxima Centauri. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness humanity's formal admission to the galactic community. The rescue of Cathara Prime had made humans famous throughout known space, not as conquerors or traitors, but as the people who answered distress calls. Dr. Chang, now serving as Earth's first xenocultural ambassador, had established the Institute for Interspecies Communication on Cathara Prime. Her unique connection to the Valtharian crystal network made her the perfect bridge between human and alien cultures. She had already helped negotiate peace treaties between 3 different species and had prevented 2 wars through careful diplomacy. The Zephyrian Dominion still existed in the dark spaces between stars, but it no longer spread unchecked. Every world they threatened now knew that help would come, that no species had to face extinction alone. The Cathara Accords, signed by humanity, the Valtharians, and 17 liberated species, created the galaxy's first true mutual defense alliance. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had been promoted to head the new Human-Valtharian Technology Exchange program. The combination of human engineering and Valtharian crystal technology was producing advances that neither species could have achieved alone. Faster-than-light communication, self-repairing hull materials, and defensive systems that could protect entire star systems were just the beginning. As Morrison looked out at the diverse assembly of alien species, he thought about the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. It had started with a simple choice to answer a call for help, and it had led to humanity taking its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The song of last hope had become the song of new beginnings, broadcast not as a desperate plea but as an invitation to join a growing alliance of free worlds. Humanity had proven that the measure of a civilization was not in its technology or territory, but in its willingness to extend a hand to those in need. In the end, when all hope was lost, the humans had arrived from the sky, and the galaxy would never be the same.